speaker will be Zach Wiener. Title of his talk, as you can see, Throwin Signs, Literacy, Discourse, and the Semiotics of Gang Violence. So Zachary is a first-year graduate student in the Department of Language and Literacy, here you see. He received his BA in Educational Studies and Linguistics from Swarthmore College in the US. And his past academic interests have led him to a wide range of interesting endeavors. He taught city high school students to capture oral histories of their neighborhood elders. He braved sub-zero temperatures to conduct classroom observations on the Mongolian steppe. He is in the process. He has in the past recreated viral videos in endangered Native American languages, and I thought you could find that really cool. He wrote love songs for 8-year-old Malaysian girls to perform on stage. It's important to finish that sentence. Zach enjoys involving himself in new contexts and spaces, both physical and metaphorical. And while he's incredibly fond of his new Vancouver home, he remains a forever proud son of Baltimore for himself. So, out of the many accolades, laudations, and awards that Zach has been given, his most cherished distinction comes from U.S. Fulbright scholars in Malaysia, who voted him, quote, most likely to teach existentialism to kindergartners. Without ado, join me in welcoming Zach.
This is okay. I'm gonna have to go like this. All right. Hi, I'm Zach Wiener. The talk that I'm going to be giving today is entitled "Throwing Signs: Literacies, Discourse, and the Semiotics of Gang Violence." Does that work? Okay. Yeah. All about me. So, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, USA. Baltimore is a city of about 800,000 people. Metropolitan area is about 1,000, maybe 1.5 million or so. It's in the Mid-Atlantic on the East Coast, if you're not familiar. I grew up in a safe neighborhood of Baltimore, a place called Pikesville, Mount Washington. You can play on the street there. Don't leave your doors unlocked, but really take regular city precautions. But I say this in order to say that I didn't grow up in a very violent neighborhood, because Baltimore is a fairly violent town. Just to give you an idea, I have a map here. This is only a chunk of Baltimore. This is a crime map, and this happened in the last, from January 1st, 2014 until now. So here you have your good amounts of thefts and shootings, and I don't need to keep going, but Baltimore is a pretty violent place. Otherwise here I went to a high school called Baltimore City College High School. Baltimore City College I wish I had a laser pointer, but I forgot to tell anyone to get one. It's where that one blue guy is. No. Right there, right where the shooting sign is, actually. It's Lake Montebello. It's right there on the shores of Lake Montebello. Just gives you a little bit of context about where I went to high school. But it's really important to recognize in this space, in this academic space, in this green college space, that I am not a gang member, okay? I'm familiar with gang culture from many of the people in my high school who were in gangs. I had lots of exposure to that kind of culture within my high school. I also have a few people that I know and a few people that I'm friends with who are also gang members. Why is this important? It's important because it's always important as a researcher, I believe, to recognize his or their positionality. And it's important for me to recognize that while I might know so much, my real exposure to gang culture ends as about 2008 when I left Baltimore City College and went on to university. And also, it's another important thing to note that a lot of scholarship that happens around gang violence and around gang activity, because of the nature of publication and because of the nature of what scholars can get access to, it's most of the time outdated. So what I'm going to give you today is perhaps not the most current, but I'll try to fill in the blanks as I can in the question and answer session and give you the best I got. So what are we talking about here? The FBI is a very good resource, actually, oh my God, on gangs and gang violence. And they typify gangs into a whole, they have like prison gangs, biker gangs, other types of biker gangs, street gangs, neighborhood gangs. Street gangs are, they quote, as criminal organizations formed on the street operating through the United States. Kind of very broad. We're going to be talking about neighborhood local gangs, often imitate or are affiliated with, more powerful national gangs, and the primary purpose of these neighborhood gangs is drug distribution and sales. So that pretty much gets a lot of it, but I wouldn't only say that drug distribution is the only means that gang members operate. I think that drug distribution has too much of a focus on territory, which is a notion that has been almost busted wide open in the recent years. Other vocabulary that I'm going to be using, gangs are like perhaps a larger national group, like the Bloods, the Crips, MS-13, these like bigger gangs, international even. We'll be talking about sets or cliques, which are generally neighborhood specific. So, for example, you'll talk about dipset. Dipset being short for diplomatic set. That means that you have sets or cliques from all around the city, maybe Baltimore, east side, west side, whatever, coming together and for whatever purpose. Gang, set, clique, just know about that. Gangs only do things in cities, right? Wrong. Gangs are across the nation, I'm gonna pause my talk, step over here, and say, I'm really sorry that this talk is very American-centric. That's the other thing I forgot to say before. I don't have much information nor time to focus on gangs in Canada and relearn that context. So I'm going to step back into my American-centric talk now. I apologize. So gangs only do things in cities. No, that's wrong. We'll see more about that later. Gangs do things all around the world, all around the country, and also in cities as well. So let me reset this timer. That will be important. Okay. Is this still working? No? Next. What we're specifically talking about, we're going to talk about stacking, which is you can kind of see right here, this is a trident. It's kind of a very common blood symbology. Stacking is a form of stylized gesture. It is, you make these hand signs. I'm sure you've seen some of them before. You make these hand signs and you do them in succession, or you do them not quite a syntax. We're not talking about a language here. We're talking about a creative style of forming these hand signs, whereby individual gang members interpret societally based, icons, bodily enacted signs into a performance that reps the gang in an honorable way, right? You're not gonna make a sign system that's like, I hate my gang. But I think the important thing to take away here is that you'll see in a second it'll become more clear, but stacking is almost like you take signs and you stack them one on top of another, right? So you're doing so in a creative way. It's not only about just like, hello, sign number 1, sign number 2, sign number 3. No, it's not like that. It's also not a language. Don't call these things a language. Let's go to the next slide. Yes. More things we're talking about. So we're going to be exploring in this talk a scene of literacy. People are like, what? Like literacy? What does that mean? Well, literacy is often thought of as a reading and writing, often reading and writing for certain and specific texts. If we think more broadly about text, however, you start to get into kookier territories, and people who are in the LLED department right now might start cringing because I might not do this justice, but here we go. So why can't we think more broadly about text, and which text is like a mechanism for what traditional literacy is. We can think about a notion whereby words represent signs. Words, we get into semiotics here, but like words represent concepts or signs. Why can't we think of other things that constitute a sign system? You know, new studies in literacy have, again, like blown the notion of just like reading, writing out of the water. And other examples of things you can think of as literacies in this field that I work in. Digital literacies, like Pokemon. Anyone play Pokemon? Raise your hands. So when you play the game, you're entering a world with certain signs and systems, and you have to learn that discourse almost in order to play. That's signified by Pikachu here. If you see Pikachu, you know if you're Pokemon literate, then you know what Pikachu does and what Pikachu's hit points values and stuff like that. Yeah. I do at least. I'm sorry, I'm not afraid to admit it. Another thing is double dutch. Double dutch. Are you familiar with double dutch? Double dutch is a jump rope game. You have two jump ropes. It's not just like I'm proficient in jumping into the middle of the jump ropes and going like this and jumping around. That's not double dutch. Double dutch is a whole system. It's a whole game system where there are different games that people sing along, like kind of hand claps that people do in the middle. And in order to play double dutch, you need to know the hand claps, you need to know the songs, you need to know how to jump, how to do the ropes. You have to do the whole thing. It's a literacy. You have to really engage in this whole system of signs and interpretations and discourses. The last one is ASL poetry. I do this one specifically because I want to contrast it with gang signs. ASL poetry, ASL is a language, right? It's not a written language. People don't write down ASL. ASL has, you know, a kind of relationship with ASL. I'm sorry, is American Sign Language. American Sign Language has a relationship with written English. However, it's its own language. ASL poetry creates signs, very like almost literally signs, and uses them in ways that are visual in order to make poetry, make something creative. Use language in creative ways, much like English does as well. It's a literacy. So, let's talk about where we're going. This is our roadmap. These things don't have much meaning now, but they will later. We're going to first talk about general bedrock. That's going to be the bedrock, almost, of my talk here. We're going to investigate one video that shows a member of the Bedford-Stuyvesant Bloods stacking signs. We're going to unpack that a little bit using the notions of literacy described in Savage Discourses. Discourses? Yeah. Savage Discourses. Where we're going to unpack those, what happens in the video in terms of anti-languages, in terms of notions of savagery, things like that. And then we're going to take a look at spectatorship and audiences. What does it mean? Who watches what? Make sense? Okay. So let's get started. First of all, you ought to know. This talk displays and discusses subject material involving violent crime, profanity, racism. No, it's serious. It involves crime, profanity, racism, and other potentially triggering material. So if this is something that might stir something up that you might not want stirred up, I won't be offended at all if anyone needs to excuse themselves at any point. So, is this the video? Yeah. This is general bedrock. Let's take a look. Where's my mouse? Okay. It's hard, you can't yeah. All right, take a look.
Bedrock, man. Last all day. I already know what it is. That 20 game, you know what I mean? All day.
Whoop, 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 whoop. So, throw them seeds in the end, shoot.
You know what I mean?
Go hard. Yeah, Big B's.
You know what I mean?
Homicide. Rolling 20s.
You already know, man. Rolling 20s, man. This is 20 game.
Neighborhood
Nothing but a
blood.
homicide thing, man.
Okay. Sorry, the lighting is the lighting, and the video is lit badly anyway, and the sound is pretty, yeah. Okay, where's my mouse? There we go. So, what are we looking at here? Let's first start with the clothing. Black face mask, black hat, red bandana, red beads, black undershirt. I think many people here know enough to know what the Bloods, the Bloods are. The Bloods are a national, almost international set of cliques. The Bloods started in LA in the early 70s, as we'll see later. And they've kind of spread across America into even Canada, I bet, down into Mexico and across the world. So when you talk about Bloods, it's not like they have like a Facebook for Bloods or anything, like they're like connected around the world, but it's like a diplomatic set of different cliques all around the world. So another thing I'd like to call attention to here is the calling. So another blood calling that's popular, at least it was popular when I was in high school. You hear a lot in the hallways was "swoop" or "brrrt." These are two things that people say on the streets. They say them in the hallways. So that's what you hear in the video. The guy, I listened to the video over and over and over again to make sure I could understand what he was saying. General bedrock of the bedside rolling 20s all day. You already know what it is all day. So that's the guy, General Bedrock is him. And he's claiming his affiliation with the Bed-Stuy. Bed-Stuy is a neighborhood, Bedford-Stuyvesant, in Brooklyn. Rolling 20s refers to a gang actually in the 1970s that was popular, a blood clique, same thing, that was popular in 1970s in LA. They've disbanded now, but they're fairly prolific, and that's why people name their cliques after. It might be just their name for their own gang, though, rather than the name that they use for everyone else. You have this guy here. Did you hear the other person in the video is kind of like an encourager or a teacher? He actually says to General Bedrock, he says, "Throw seeds in the air and shoot him." So you see General Bedrock take the sign, if I can make it properly. You have a C for Crip. Crip is like the other pan-national rival gang. They wear blue. That's really simplistic. They have a C here, but you can't have a C in your stack because that's like repping Crips. So you need to put hands are bad. You got to put a strikeout through it. Even if, and then what you do, what he's doing is you throw it in the air and you shoot it. You're taking their symbol, and then you're shooting it. So it's not only about, there's a lot of layers to that there, that you're using another person's sign, you're just crossing it out. Not only that, but you're going up and you're making gun hands and you're shooting it, right? So that's a lot to unpack there. And then he says at the end, homicide, rolling 20s. You already know what I mean. Rolling 20s, remember that homicide thing. So I'm not really, I'll tell you, I don't really know what that means in context because I don't know what remember that homicide thing means. But of course, it's probably violent, right? Homicide is involving killing people. So you have to treat this as a real threat. You have to treat this as a real sign of violence, at least. Let's see what's else here. With all that said, you want to watch it again?
That right, man. Last all day. I already know that it's that 20 game, you know what I mean? All day.
Whoop, 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 whoop. So, throw them seeds in the air, shoot it.
You know what I mean?
There you go.
Go hard. Yeah, Big B's.
You know what I mean?
Homicide. Rolling 20s.
You already know, man. Rolling 20s, man. This is 20 game.
Neighborhood
Remember the
blood.
homicide thing, man.
Yeah. So that's that. Let's get to work. So now we've looked at general bedrock and kind of taken a cursory look at what's happening in the scene of literacy, right? So now we're going to go and I'm going to take some theory and unpack it a little bit. This is what we're going to call savage discourses. The Savage Mind is the name of a book from 1962, written by a guy. This is so meta. It's written by a guy named Claude Lévi-Strauss. Claude Lévi-Strauss is a semiotician and also an anthropologist. So he wasn't just a philosophist or a theorist alone. He also corroborated what he saw with what happens what he saw in the field. He draws up with what I call a literacy dichotomy. His terms. The first one is the bricoleur. The bricoleur is almost like right down here, right here. And all things are tools. So the bricoleur deals in tools and sees what are tools, useful, not useful. The bricoleur is only capable of taking the not useful things and repurposing them into the useful things. Yeah? So the bricoleur is down here. Then you have the engineer. The engineer's up here. Can I get rid of this presentation right here? Okay, cool. The engineers, all things are part of a whole mechanism. So that he sees how the whole machine works. And rather than repurposing things that are just kind of broken and making them again working, he invents new things. Map this onto the literacy, and you get some pretty interesting yet troubling things. Claude Lévi-Strauss, at least my interpretation says that bricoleurs are like savage minds. They can only reproduce and repurpose. Easily mapped onto oral societies, not literate ones, but societies that don't have a writing system. Oral societies, however, are grown into complex and vibrant civilizations. People use the Yoruba Empire, for example, as a civilization that had no writing and yet still had roads, streets, infrastructures, all the markings of a very developed civilization. Claude Lévi-Strauss wasn't saying anything particularly iconoclastic, however. Missionaries, since the rise of colonialism and imperialism, have tried to civilize oral societies by inventing writing for their languages, right? So you have things like Inuktitut, using a Canadian example, Maori, and kind of in a funny way, Pinyin Chinese. Because people decided, this writing system just doesn't make much sense to us, so we're just going to civilize it even more and make a Roman one instead, right? So that's kind of... It's a sticky notion in a lot of Western discourses. For example, when I was in 8th grade, I was like a good 8th grade student. I learned about, a good hallmark of civilization was a writing system, like the Mayans or the Egyptians. And that's entirely problematic. So you take that idea of illiterate people are savages, and you apply it to this other guy. His name is George Lakoff. He has a book called Metaphors We Live By. His whole point is that metaphors are the way that we think, the way that we interpret the world. They're not necessarily like attitudes, but they're things like, for example, in his book, I think I remember one of them being like, men are tall, women are down, you know? Things like bowls and spears. These like metaphors that we think of, and they get more, that's like just a very, he says like a primitive one, but there's more examples. So let's think about these metaphors for a second and I'll try to apply that thing. I write the metaphors in capital letters to represent that they're Lakovian, that they're not like things that I'm saying, they're things that like Lakovian brains are saying. So people who can't write are savages. It's not a hard step from there to people of color in urban areas. This is not a hard step in Americanese. People of color in urban areas can't speak or write in standard English. There's notions of that all over. You have to just trust me unless you've seen the articles and stuff. And then it's an easy jump from there to people of color in urban areas are savages. That's where the end conclusion is. And that's where I think a lot of people treat General Bedrock and many of the other residents in his neighborhood. But there are counter notions, and we're going to start exploring those. Is this a video? Yeah, cool. I need to start shortening this. We're only going to watch a little bit of this, so I apologize. This is the one that has some pretty bad language. Go. Lost my mouse. Here we go. That's all we need to really see. But that's actually a great place to stop. So what I want you to look at is the footwork. There's also some stacking going on in the video. Did you guys see it? But I might try to draw that out. You also hear the lyrics. He goes, B's up, C's down, C's upside down. So that's a good indication there. But the footwork is what's really interesting to me. There is some research out there. Well, you have the blood walk. That's what you were seeing right there was the blood walk. What happens in the blood walk is you have people stacking, and then people spell out the B-L-O-O-D on the ground with their feet. That's the footwork. And they do that in a lot of ways, and for a lot of reasons. To issue threats, to memorialize fellow gang members, to express affiliations, and the last thing. Here's Venus Williams doing the crit walk. Venus Williams doing the crit walk. Anyway. I think she's from that Crip area of LA, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure if she is, but for some reason she's repping the Crips. So.
Why is she wearing the red, which is a blood color? No, she's wearing a blue dress.
Couldn't tell yet. So. This is from Phillips in 2009. The multiple dichotomies of mind, body, civilized, savage, written, oral, frame a primarily racialized duality that mars political and social life of American society, that of white and black. As mind is to civilized and to written, so it is to white. As body is to savage and oral, so it is to black. An analysis of gang dancing both challenges and reinforces this racialized dualism. So graffiti is in a similar ilk. Who's reading what? So you have coding affiliation here. What you do in lots of the graffiti is not only about just saying, "Hi, I'm a blood. This is my territory." Like love blood. A lot of it is in the graffiti itself, which comes in letters. You encode your affiliations. You almost steep the message in your own affiliations. So Crips here might write the word fuck, but you see at the top here, this K is slashed out. That's because generally CK stands for Crip Killer. So we're going to write FUCC instead. Bloods cross out C's because anytime you write C, it's like representing Crips, so they got to cross it out. Then you have K, and also 5. So 5 is a common letter in blood symbology. So you can see here like 5150. I don't know what the 5150 means, but 5s is it's going to be some. I'm guessing that it's like a numerology thing with 5s being for bloods. B dog is his name. Zeros are generally crossed out for some reason. I didn't really get far into why. C's, C, you see that crossed out. Salem, B, I can't read that. Can someone read that? Oh yeah, be the hood. Yeah, that's right. I read it before. Thank you. And I just want to let you know, as an anecdote, or as an aside, that's a map of where Salem is. It's in Idaho. This is from Salem, Idaho. This is on top. This is on the side of either a house or, actually, it's a house. So bloods are everywhere. Our data and interview. This is from Adams and Winter. Our data and interviews reveal that many different reasons for writing graffiti, all centering around individual and social prominence inside and outside the neighborhood, not territorial control. Not territorial control. An act of writing can be self-advertisement, one-upmanship, and indication of social networks, aesthetic expression, a message about relationships among gangs, or an act of public mourning, as well as an attempt to create conflict. There are so many ways that this text can mean things. You know, it's not just about like, "Hi, this is our territory," as Adams and Winter say. They did most of their work in Phoenix, by the way. It's about encoding and about steeping culture, steeping systems. So one last guy, I promise it. One last person, I'm sorry. Speaking the anti-language. Anti-languages is an idea that was formed by M.A.K. Holliday. And an anti-language is a language, I'm using this term a little lightly here because we're not talking about languages specifically with stacking. Anti-languages is a language of an anti-society that is hostile to its society. Anti-language is meant to, in its divergence from the mainstream society, convey disdain and disaffiliation. So you have the anti-society, which really doesn't affiliate with mainstream society at all. In fact, it's hostile to it and uses anti-language as a means of conveying that. The trains of transitions show that when you pull the utterance, the anti-linguistic utterance out of its antisocial context, it loses power and meaning, right? So you have CK5, so you have CK Crip Killer 5s, Crips down. You go down to the C's down. We kill Crips. We, Bloods, are fundamentally opposed to Crips and those who identify as such. It's laughable, but this is a very serious statement. So what happens in that process is that when you take the anti-language out of the utterance, it no longer conveys the same thing. So let's get into the last part of this talk. We've talked about the video. We've talked about some of the social implications here, the theories behind it and such. So now we're going to talk about who really watches the watched man, who watches the video, the spectatorship, and why. YouTube? More like my team. YouTube is just as normative as other controlled forms of media. This is by Yukash, 2009. What I mean by that, or what she means by that, is that people think, oh my god, it's YouTube, everyone can see everything, like the whole spectatorship is going to be democratized and we're all going to watch everything and be harmony happily ever after. No, it doesn't work like that. People see what they want to see. People see, if people want to see normatized views that are exactly the same as what they see on TV, they'll see that. because they go looking for it. YouTube is all about the search function. Does it, raise your hand if you actually go to the YouTube front page and go, oh, I'm going to look at this video that they advertise. Anyone? Hanson.
Oh, but they have this thing where you look at your past videos and they show you.
It's true. All right, I forgot about that point. So Yuhash writes, that which we already know and already like enjoys the special treatment offered to the most viewed. Videos that are easily found are always visible, whether you search for them or not. Hey, the most viewed deserve such attention. These special videos, well, they look like television, featuring faces, formats, and feelings we're already familiar with, or at least aspiring to them. So at least those videos aspire to those faces. But you still get people who view these stacking videos or get these cultural tropes and kind of, like the anti-language situation, misappropriate them. So you get a whole bunch of this. My favorite is this one. It's pretty gross. What's wrong here? What's wrong with this? People who generally don't represent bloods. Do you all think that anyone here is a blood? So, and forgive me. What do you see here? White, predominantly white at least. Not wearing flags or any kind of indications, showing a lot of privilege in their dress, having a lot of fun. Gang signs are a lot of fun. No, that's pretty gross. So you go back to this. It's the same thing. You take these violent signs, you take these signs that really represent acts of violence or threats of violence or things that have already been done that are violent, and you take them out of context. You take them out of their anti-social, their anti-language meaning, and then you get, we bloods are fundamentally opposed to groups or such that. Like you get this talk that's, it's almost offensive to the people who are affected by that crime. So let's wrap up. Gangs are real. Gangs are frightening. And let me tell you why. This is the fun part. It's story time. So when I was a freshman in my high school, Baltimore City College High School, most of the crime that was talked about in my high school, most of the crime that was talked about in the Baltimore Sun or the newspapers was local territory beefs. Very much like said at the beginning, the territorial, this is my neighborhood, I sell drugs here, this is your neighborhood, you're trying to encroach on my neighborhood, then we have violence, or something happens at a club where two people are at and things get violent. In a way, it's the crime is dangerous. Baltimore had the same amount of murders, too many of them, at that point as it does now. But structurally, something seems very much more dangerous to me about when these national gangs moved in, the Bloods, the Crips, MS-13. Because, you get checked more. People start to feel a little bit like their gangs have more, they have more presence behind them. So people, at the time when I was a junior, this process was almost complete in Baltimore, and some of my friends, I never took the bus, so this wasn't a problem for me, would have to travel, say, from Cherry Hill down here to Baltimore City College up here. In order to get there, you had to take the bus, the 13, up to the Inner Harbor, then switch to the light rail up to Mondawmin, and then go on the 22 over to Baltimore City College. That's 1, 2, it's 2? Did I say 2? 3. Or two stops where you have to sit there and wait for the transportation in two different neighborhoods that might not be your neighborhood, might not be your gang's neighborhood. Anyway, people will come up to you and check you for affiliation. This is a process where people come up to you and actually, throw signs at you, stack signs at you maybe. They're just probably throw signs at you. And you're supposed to throw signs back. And if they're not the right signs, something's going to happen. And if you don't throw signs, then you're unaffiliated. And you're a target anyway, because, who's going to care? And you might have something on you, so who's going to have your back? So at school, we started you know, people are going to bring guns. People are going to bring knives, not because they want to shoot up the school. It's because they want to protect themselves on the way. That's why these things are dangerous. They're scary. It's very real. It's not just about, you know, a Tumblr that I saw today called White Chicks Throwing Gang Signs, which is problematic in itself, but it's not just about that. And when you're trying to, what do I mean by this actually? I wrote this in. I don't know what I mean. When you're in a world, you learn your surroundings. You know, it's things are based in context. Contexts are learn languages, of course. Like say you were going to move to Honduras, you would learn Spanish. But when you're also in a gang, or when you're entering a gang territory, you're being initiated into a gang, you take on the literacies. So, because you have to, because this is part of your social reality. That's what I meant by that. So, if we're the police, if we're concerned citizens, if we're community development organizations, if we're people that just want to stop this spread of violence, then we have to understand how the social mechanisms that underpin criminal structures, we have to understand how they work. And it's, okay, thank you.